Sri Aurobindo has been evoking for us the experience that comes to Savitri with the complete silencing of her whole being. So when everything falls silent, there's a sense of the unreality of all the appearances of the world. No? And yet she feels that beyond all these appearances, there is a reality. No? And yet that reality can't be grasped by the senses or by thought or in any way. It's a spaceless and a placeless infinite. But those seem to be just like words, yet eternity and infinity seemed but words, vainly affixed, stuck onto the mind in its incompetence to grasp that. It puts these words, it says eternity, infinity, on that stupendous, lone reality. That is the only thing that is real. All the appearances of the world, they look like shadows, things that have no substance and no meaning. So I'm going to read on from there. Speaking about that stupendous lone reality, Sri Aurobindo says, the world is but a spark burst from its light. All moments, flashes from its timelessness. All objects, glimmerings of the bodiless that disappear from mind when that is seen. It held as if a shield before its face, a consciousness that saw without a seer, the truth where knowledge is not, nor knower, nor known. The love, enamored of its own delight, in which the lover is not, nor the beloved, bringing their personal passion into the vast. The force, omnipotent in quietude, the bliss that none can ever hope to taste. It cancelled the convincing cheat of self, a truth in nothingness was its mighty clue. If all existence could renounce to be, and being take refuge in non-being's arms, and non-being could strike out its ciphered round, some lustre of that reality might appear. A formless liberation came on her. Once sepulchred alive in brain and flesh, she had risen up from body, mind, and life. She was no more a person in a world. She had escaped into infinity. What once had been herself had disappeared. There was no frame of things, no figure of soul. A refugee from the domain of sense, evading the necessity of thought, delivered from knowledge and from ignorance, and rescued from the true and the untrue. She shared the superconscient's high retreat beyond the self-born word, the nude idea, the first bare, solid ground of consciousness. Beings were not there. Existence had no place. There was no temptation of the joy to be. Unutterably effaced, no one and null, a vanishing vestige like a violet trace, a faint record merely of a self now past. She was a point in the unknowable. I'll stop there. Done it, Rosa?
The world is but a spark burst from its light. All moments flashes from its timelessness. All objects glimmerings of the bodiless that disappear from mind when that is seen.
Yes. So this is speaking about that stupendous lone reality, that spaceless and placeless infinite. This is describing an experience. And in that experience, the whole world seems to be just a little spark that has flashed out from the light of that stupendous lone reality. And if we have time here, all our moments are just flashes coming out of that timelessness. All these objects that are around, Savitri experiences them as faint lights, glimmerings. To glimmer is to glow faintly. No? So all the things around, they seem like glimmerings of that reality which is bodiless. It does not have any form or shape or limit at all. So all these things, the world, the moments, the objects, they all disappear from the mind when the mind becomes aware of that reality.
It held as if a shield before its face, the consciousness that saw without a seal, the truth, where knowledge is not, nor known, nor known, the love enamored of its own delight, in which the lover is not, nor the beloved, bringing their personal passion into the vast, the force, omnipotent, in quietude. the bliss that none can ever hope to taste.
Yes. It's as if that lone reality is holding a kind of mask in front of its face. And that mask takes the appearance of a consciousness in which there's no one seeing. There's just a consciousness that's seeing, that's aware. There's a truth where there's no knower and there's no knowledge and there's nothing known. There's just that truth. But this is like a kind of shield that it puts in front of itself. It doesn't show itself. It only gives this sense that this is the only reality. This consciousness in which there's nobody being conscious. There's no seer. No. There's a truth, but nobody is knowing that truth. There's a love which is completely satisfied with its own delight, enamored, it's in love with its own delight, and there's no one loving, there's no lover there, and there was no one being loved. If there were a lover and a beloved, that would be bringing something personal, and a personal passion, a personal relationship, bringing that into this vast limitlessness. No, there's nothing like that. There's a consciousness, there's a truth, there's a love, there's a force, an omnipotent force, but it doesn't move. It's absolutely still and silent. All powerful, omnipotent in quietude. And there is a bliss, state of beatitude that no one can ever hope to taste, to experience.
This is not Satchitananda. This is not Satchitananda.
This is that Ananda, but it's beyond the personal. It's a vast, impersonal, and it's only a projection or an expression of that which is behind. She becomes aware of it as a bliss that nobody can ever hope to experience, but that's not what it is. No, it itself is something beyond that.
Is these lines have any relevance with the adoration of the Divine Mother, where but who has lifted up the veil of light and who has seen the body of the King?
Yes, it has some connection. Do you want me to explain that connection now? This is in Book 3, this line which Bhavana has just quoted. The first canto of Book 3 is called The Pursuit of the Unknowable. And in a way what Savitri is experiencing now is that unknowable. And that is a very, very liberating experience for Aswapati, and as it is becoming for Savitri also. We will read about her liberation from all sense of person, as if this limited personality no longer exists at all. No. But in Canto 2, this line which you just read, then Aswapati is told that is a very, very powerful, liberating experience. But it's not the whole truth. There's another experience beyond. That is, what's the line before? Oh, now you've lost it. Huh? But who, before that, before who has seen the body of the Lord?
A black veil has been lifted. We have seen the mighty shadow of the omniscient Lord. But who has lifted up the veil of light? And
Who has seen?
the body?
Yes, who has seen? We may have had this glimpse, no, of that reality, but there's something else, and that something else will be what we will read about in the last canto, in Canto 7. Yeah.
It's as if the poet is just, there's a little tease with this light that none can ever hope to taste. So what your explanation is that she perceives it.
She perceives this kind of projection, but it's something unknowable, unattainable, ungraspable. None can ever hope to taste it.
That's
Her experience. Yes. And this unknowable reality, then, it's described in the next sentence, what its effect, Bhavana.
It cancelled the convincing cheat of self. A truth in nothingness was its mighty clue. If all existence could renounce to be, and being take refuge in non-being's arms, and non-being could strike out its ciphered wrong, some lustre of that reality might appear.
So that reality, cancelled out the convincing cheat of self. We, all of us, feel that we exist, no? Even if we don't feel anything else, we feel, oh, well, I'm here, I'm feeling, I'm perceiving, I'm thinking, so I exist. But he says that's just a convincing cheat. None of us really exist, at least not in that way. So this experience of the complete silencing, clearing of the mind and consequently the whole being, it gives that sense of the unreality, not only of world, but of self. A truth in nothingness was its mighty clue. The clue is that something that leads you to something, to a realization or an understanding. So that in nothingness there's a truth. And then he tries to explain it in ways that can prompt some experience in us. If all existence, even the supreme existence, could renounce to be, could give up existing, and what we think of as being could take refuge in non-being's arms. There's Sat, the supreme existence, but there's also something like Asat, not being. So if that being, that existence, could merge into non-being, take refuge in its arms, and then even the non-being could cross itself out, could strike out its ciphered round, its empty circle. No, even this doesn't exist. There's no Sat, there's no Asat. Some luster, some light of that reality could appear. Might appear. Thank you. Patricia, you read.
A formless liberation came on her. Once sepulchred alive in brain and flesh, she had risen up from body, mind, and life. She was no more a person in the world. She had escaped into infinity.
Yes. So this is the formless liberation. The liberation, the dissolution of all form, and form implies limits, outlines. Liberation means being set free. So she's set free from this illusion of being a separate person. And once it says she had been sepulchred in mind, in brain and flesh. A sepulchre is a tomb where somebody is buried, where the remains of somebody is. So it was as if she had been contained in this brain and flesh, and she hadn't really been alive. She'd been confined in this dead framework. But now she has risen up out of that sepulchre. She's risen up out of body, mind, and life. And she no longer experiences herself as a person in a world. She's escaped. She's escaped into infinity. So this is one of the great realizations of yoga, mukti, moksha, that spiritual seekers have sought for millennia. But Sri Aurobindo is telling us this is a very great realization, but it's not the ultimate realization. Beyond that, there's another experience. Would you like to read?
What once had been herself had disappeared. There was no frame of things, no figure of soul.
Continue.
A refugee from the domain of sense, evading the necessity of thought, delivered from knowledge and from ignorance, and rescued from the true and the untrue. She shared the superconscious high retreat beyond the self-born world, the new idea, the first bare, solid ground of consciousness.
So I think we'll pause there. So that feeling of Savitri, what once had been herself, had disappeared. And there's no framework, no physical framework of things. There's even no figure of soul, no sense of an individualized soul. She's a refugee. A refugee is a person who runs away from a state that they for one reason or another, they need to leave it. So what she's escaped from is the domain of sense, of the senses. Almost everything that we experience is determined by our senses. It's how we relate to the world around us. She's escaped from that. She's escaped. To evade means also to escape, to run away from something. She's escaped from the necessity of thought. There's no need for her to think. There's no need for her to interpret the data which the senses give. There's no need for her to interpret the world around her. She's been delivered. And this is another word like liberate. She's been set free from this duality of knowledge and ignorance. We feel that we know certain things. There are other things that we don't know. So in one respect we may have some knowledge, but in other respects there's the ignorance. And these are two fundamentally different ways of experiencing the world. with knowledge, capital K, knowing the reality of the world and not knowing it. She's rescued from the duality of there being something true and what is not true. There's this opposition. Instead, she's really reached the state of superconscience, the transcendent state. She shared the superconscious high retreat, a plane which is beyond the self-born word and beyond the nude idea. She's come into a state of pure consciousness, which is not projecting itself in any way. The word, the word with a capital W, it's the creative word from which things get manifested. No? But she's in a state above that, before that, we could say, beyond that, beyond the pure, nude, naked idea, which again is creative, which gives rise to forms and movements and forces. So this is in a transcendent state before any manifestation. She's experiencing the first bare ground of consciousness, pure consciousness. Sergei.
Beings do not existence at no place. There was no temptation of the joy to be. Unutterably effaced, no one, and now, a vanishing vestige, like a violet race, a faint record merely of a self now past. She was a point in the unknown.
So it's, we think, when we think of Satchitananda, we think of existence, consciousness and Ananda being one. But there are planes in which one or another of these states predominate. So she's come into this state of pure consciousness. There's no existence there. There are no beings, no existences. And there's no Ananda. There's no temptation of the joy to be. And in that state, she herself feels effaced. This means rubbed out, wiped out. When we have the class, we have a whiteboard and something's written on it, and you efface it, you wipe it off. It's as if she herself has been effaced in a way that can't be expressed. To utter means to speak out, to express. It's unutterably effaced. Impossible to say how much effaced she is. She's become no one, nothing, null. She doesn't exist. A vanishing vestige, like a violet trace. A vestige is something that's left after everything has gone. No? There's just a little bit, a trace, a mark of where something was. No? A faint record, just a faint record of a self that's now past, that's now no longer exists. She feels like a faint record, a vestige, something that's left over from a self that's now finished, past. And she feels like a point in that unknowable reality. A point has no dimensions. No. Lela, would you read?
Only some last annulment now remained. Annihilation's vague, indefinable step. A memory of being still was there and kept her separate from nothingness. She wasn't that, but still it became not that.
Yes. So she's a point in the unknowable, no? But something still exists. Now some last annulment now remained. Annihilation, when something completely ceases to exist. And that would be some further vague, indefinable step. At the moment, there's still a memory of having existed, a memory of being still was there. And that memory is keeping her separate from that vast nothingness, that unknowableness. She is in that, she's a point in the unknowable, but she hasn't become that. Yeah.
Is it because of her human nature?
Well, it's the last remnant of her identity. And we will see what comes next. Joel.
This shadow of herself, so close to naught, could be again self's point d'appui to live, return out of the inconceivable, and be what some mysterious vast might choose.
Yes. So there's this violet trace, the shadow of herself. It's almost nothing. It could be again a point d'appui, a point, a basis for coming back into existence, to live again. Right? The fact that there's that little trace means that the whole self might come back again. It might return out of this inconceivable state that she is in. And it could be what some mysterious vast might choose. She wouldn't go back to being what she was before. She could become anything which this unknowable vastness would choose for her to be. Hmm?
This one is a French word.
Point d'appui. What does it mean? It means a place you can press on in order to move a lever, I think, no? Yes. You know, if you want to move something big and heavy, there's a fulcrum. That's what it means, a fulcrum. Venkat.
Even as the unknowable decreed, she might be now, or you become the all. Or if the omnipotent nihil took a shape, emerge as someone and redeem the veil.
So all these possibilities are there. It depends on what that unknowable decreed, what it commands, what it says must happen. She might be nothing. She might fade away completely. Or she could again become the whole universe. Or if that nothingness, that all-powerful nothingness took a shape, then she might come out, emerge as someone, again as a person, and she might even be able to save the world like that. Ganga Lakshmi?
Even she might learn what the mystic shift her The seeming
exit, the seeming exit.
exit, sorry. The seeming exit or close and or follow could be a blind, tenebrous passage screened from sight. Her state, the eclipsing shell of a darkness sun, on its secret way to the ineffable.
Yes. If the unknowable decrease, she might learn what this mystical cipher, this apparent zero, what it holds, what it contains. It looks like an exit, it looks like a way out of existence. Or it might be, the other thing it looks like is that it's a dead end, that this is the end, no? A closed end of all. But it might be a blind, tenebrous passage, a kind of tunnel, hidden tunnel, where it's difficult to see, it's shadowy, it's dark, no? This state that she's in now might be like, he says, a darkened sun. Makes me think of a black hole. There was no talk of black holes in those days, but I think something like that happens, no? That the sun explodes and then it collapses. So it might be something like that, a darkened sun, but it's on its secret way to that ineffable, that inexpressible ultimate reality. Verbal.
Even now, her splendid being might flame up of the silence of the mountain, gleaming portion of the all-wonderful power of sun, all fulfillment of the will, a shining mirror of the eternal truth, to show to the one world its manifest face, to the souls of men their deep identity.
So even now, her identity, like a sun that's been eclipsed, it might flame back out of that silence and that nullity and appear. Then she would be seen as a gleaming, wonderful, shining portion of that unknowable, all wonderful, no? A power of some all-affirming absolute. What she's been experiencing is this all-negating absolute. But there's not only the eternal no, there's also the eternal yes. So if she flamed back like that, she could be a shining mirror of the eternal truth, reflecting back to that one in all, the divine presence immanent in all the forms of the universe, to shine back and show to all that indwelling divinity its manifest face. It could see itself manifested in the appearances, and that would at the same time show to the divine in us, to the souls of man, their deep identity, their oneness. Chandra, you'll read.
Or she might
Might wake.
into God's
Quietude.
behind the cosmic day and cosmic night, and rest appears in his white eternity.
Yes, so that's another alternative. That from this state that she's in, she might wake up and find herself in the eternity of God, no? Beyond the dualities of the universe, beyond the cosmic day and the cosmic night. And then she could rest appeased, satisfied and at peace in that white, pure eternity of the Lord. Suresh?
But this was now unreal or remote, or covered in the mystic, fathomless blank.
Yes, so that possibility of waking up into God's quietude, it now feels unreal, remote, far away to her, or else it's just covered up by this mystic, fathomless blank. That's what she's experiencing, this blankness, which is fathomless. She can't get to the bottom of that. Dhanalakshmi.
Infinite nothingness was the ultimate sign, or else the real was the unknowable. A lonely absolute negated all. It effaced the ignorant world from its solitude and drowned the soul in its everlasting peace.
So this is summing up this experience. Either the ultimate sign, the ultimate thing that we can see or experience, infinite nothingness, shunya. Yeah. Or else the real, what is real, what really exists, is the unknowable, what can't be known. What she's experiencing is this lonely absolute which denies the reality of everything. It negated everything. That experience effaces the ignorant world from its solitude. Not identified with the world anymore. The world is wiped out from that loneness of this lonely absolute. And this drowns the soul in its everlasting peace. So we can understand that this experience has had its very, very powerful appeal. But there's a further step, and we'll start reading about that next time. It held as if a shield before its face, a consciousness that saw without a seer, the truth where knowledge is not, nor knower, nor known, the love enamoured of its own delight, in which the lover is not, nor the beloved, bringing their personal passion into the vast. The force omnipotent in quietude, the bliss that none can ever hope to taste. It cancelled the convincing cheat of self, a truth in nothingness was its mighty clue. If all existence could renounce to be, and being take refuge in non-being's arms, and non-being could strike out its ciphered round. Some lustre of that reality might appear. A formless liberation came on her. Once sepulchred alive in brain and flesh, she had risen up from body, mind, and life. She was no more a person in a world. She had escaped into infinity. What once had been herself had disappeared. There was no frame of things, no figure of soul. A refugee from the domain of sense, evading the necessity of thought, delivered from knowledge and from ignorance, and rescued from the true and the untrue. She shared the superconscient's high retreat beyond the self-born word, the nude idea, the first bare solid ground of consciousness. Beings were not there. Existence had no place. There was no temptation of the joy to be. Unutterably effaced, no one and null. A vanishing vestige like a violet trace. A faint record merely of a self now past. She was a point in the unknowable. Only some last annulment now remained, annihilation's vague, indefinable step. A memory of being still was there and kept her separate from nothingness. She was in that, but still became not that. This shadow of herself, so close to naught, could be again self's point d'appui to live, return out of the inconceivable, and be what some mysterious vast might choose. Even as the unknowable decreed, she might be naught, or new become the all. Or if the omnipotent nihil took a shape, emerge as someone and redeem the world. Even she might learn what the mystic cipher held. This seeming exit or closed end of all could be a blind, tenebrous passage screened from sight, her state the eclipsing shell of a darkened sun on its secret way to the ineffable. Even now her splendid being might flame back out of the silence and the nullity, a gleaming portion of the all-wonderful, a power of some all-affirming absolute, a shining mirror of the eternal truth, to show to the one in all its manifest face, to the souls of men their deep identity. Or she might wake into God's quietude, beyond the cosmic day and cosmic night, and rest appeased in His white eternity. But this was now unreal or remote, or covered in the mystic, fathomless blank. In infinite nothingness was the ultimate sign, or else the real was the unknowable, a lonely absolute negated all. It effaced the ignorant world from its solitude and drowned the soul in its everlasting peace.